Opportunities in the Marketplace by Victor Yap and Doris Mock. Chapter 15. Elisha, More Like the Master. 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 19 to 27. The 6 most important words in the English language are, I admit I made a mistake. The 5 most important words in the English language are, you did a good job. The 4 most important words in the English language are, what is your opinion? The 3 most important words in the English language are, if you please. The 2 most important words in the English language are, thank you. The 1 most important word in the English language is, we. The least important word in the English language is, I. Elisha, the prophet, was an extraordinary prophet, and he had a very interesting servant by the name of Gehazi. The last chapter featured a slighted, shameless, and shocked Gehazi who tried to turn away, 2 Kings 4:27, the Shunammite woman grabbing the prophet by the feet and seeking him to revive his dead son. Elisha responded by sending Gehazi to lay the prophet's staff upon the face of the child to wake the boy, except the boy did not recover. 2 Kings 4:31. So Elisha had to himself do the healing, to the shock and shame of the servant. Then Naaman came along, and the downfall of the temperamental, testy, and troubled servant was complete. What are your motives of serving? How is your attitude when you are slighted, snubbed, or shamed? Why is selflessness and steadfastness required of all God's servants, regardless the task or treatment? First, be gracious, not grudging. 2 Kings 5:19-20. Go in peace, Elisha said. After Naaman had traveled some distance, Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said to himself, my master was too easy on Naaman, this Aramean, by not accepting from him what he brought. As surely as the Lord lives, I will run after him and get something from him. I am delighted to meet you, said the father of the college student, shaking hands warmly with the professor. My son took algebra from you last year, you know. Pardon me, said the professor. He was exposed to it, but he did not take it. Gehazi is synonymous with disobedience, dishonesty, discontent, and dissatisfaction. The phrase, go in peace, with go in the imperative mood uttered by Elisha, would have settled and sealed the story of Naaman in the most beautiful way, but not to the discontented and displeased servant Gehazi. The same imperatival usage was formerly given as a blessing and a benediction from a father-in-law, Exodus 4:18, Jethro to Moses, from a priest, Judges 18:6, from a judge, 1 Samuel 1:17, Eli, from a friend, 1 Samuel 20:42, Jonathan, and from a king, 1 Samuel 29 verse 7. It was a perfect end to an exhausting, encouraging, and excellent day. However, there was no peace in Gehazi, who spoke to himself, verse 20, ran after Gehazi, verse 20, and took his share. The benediction and blessing, go in peace, was the definitive, direct, and decisive, and departing and demanding way to close, celebrate, and commend the case. The first thing we know about Gehazi was his status. He was introduced in the Bible 6 times as servant, twice as Gehazi, his servant, 2 Kings 4:12 and 25, and once for servant of Elisha, the man of God, 2 Kings 5:20, thy servant, 2 Kings 5:25, servant of the man of God, 2 Kings 6:15, and Gehazi, the servant of the man of God, 2 Kings 8:4. Further, Gehazi addressed Elisha as my master twice, verses 20 and 22, and Elisha was called his master once, 2 Kings 5:25. As servant, he was not in the position to change, correct, challenge, or confront his master. His job was to act as go-between, carry out orders, get things done, please his master, and lighten his load. When the healed, humbled, and happy Naaman left, Gehazi had a heavy dose of remorse. The verb too easy or spare, verse 20, is translated elsewhere in the King James Version as withheld, Genesis 26, kept back, Genesis 39:9, held back, 2 Samuel 18:16, spare, 2 Kings 5:20, refrain, Job 7:11, assuage, Job 16:5, reserved, Job 21:30, forbear, Proverbs 24:11, hinder, Isaiah 14:6. He felt that Naaman was let off the hook too lightly, without rhyme, reason, or remuneration. Some sort of repayment, reward, and reimbursement were justified. Not only could Naaman afford to pay, he was a Gentile, a captain, and an invader who departed too easy, scot-free, with no cost attached. Gehazi's disrespectful and disparaging phrase, Naaman this Aramean, verse 20, was a departure from Naaman's lofty and lowly status, lofty by man's standards, as previously he was Naaman, captain of the host of the king of Syria, 2 Kings 5:1, and lowly because the king called him Naaman, my servant, 2 Kings 5:6. But Naaman was never previously discriminated or despised. The verb brought, verse 20, was previously referred to the letter Naaman brought to the king of Israel, 2 Kings 5:6, and the horses and chariot that went or brought with Naaman, 2 Kings 5:9, but Gehazi only cared for the goods he brought. The verb run, verse 20, is repeated in verses 2 and 21. Gehazi was determined to make Naaman pay and make him poorer. Second, be generous, not greedy. 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 22 and 23. Everything is all right, Gehazi answered. My master sent me to say, 2 young men from the company of the prophets have just come to me from the hill country of Ephraim. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 sets of clothing. By all means, take 2 talents, said Naaman. He urged Gehazi to accept them, and then tied up the 2 talents of silver in 2 bags with 2 sets of clothing. He gave them to 2 of his servants, and they carried them ahead of Gehazi. Leo Tolstoy, the famous Russian writer, had a deep insight into human nature. In one of his books, he speaks of a Russian peasant who was told that he could have all the land he could measure by walking in one day, from sunrise to sunset. The agreement stipulated that by sundown he must be back at his starting point. The man envisioned great holdings. Early in the morning the man began walking, but as he realized that every foot of land on which he stepped belonged to him, he began to run at a feverish pace. The agreement stipulated that by sundown he must have returned to his starting point. His greed was so great, however, that more than half his time had elapsed before he turned back. He had to run at top speed to beat the setting sun. It was a real struggle. If he were not at the appointed place, he would lose all. He finally made it, but even as his foot touched the starting point, he fell dead from exhaustion. All that he gained in the end was sufficient land for his dead body, 6 feet of earth. That was his final inheritance. The claim, my master sent me, verse 22, made Elisha into a lying, hypocritical, and greedy person. Previously, Naaman urged Elisha to accept a gift from him, but the prophet refused, verse 16, and replied, As surely as the Lord lives, whom I serve, I will not accept a thing. A prophet is as good as his words. He speaks in the name of the Lord, Deuteronomy 18:22, and prays for other, Genesis 20:7. Further, Gehazi invoked the Lord's name to emphasize his sincerity, identity with Gehazi, and abuse his authority. It was a good last word to and a conversation or conflict. The meeting of the commander or captain with the prophet was a clash of two egos and titans. The decline of the gift was firm and final. The verb urge, verse 16, is translated as pressed, Genesis 19:3, urged, Genesis 33:11, and stubbornness, 1 Samuel 15:23, and Elisha's action is in the intensive peel stem to be translated as utterly refused. Gehazi dragged Elisha's name into the mud and threw his master under the bus when he implied that his master changed his mind, made a U-turn, and needed the money. Not only that, Gehazi involved two more pieces of information, verse 22, prophet and mountains, to make it more needy and heartbreaking in his spin and sob of a tale. The need was dire, the guests were deserving, and the trip was tiring. It was implied. Ephraim was known for her narrow mountains, Joshua 17:15, and harsh conditions, Jeremiah 4:15. Gehazi ended with an imperative, give, in verse 23. It was demanding, deceiving, and deliberate. For instance, there are 35 instances of give in the New Testament, but none is an imperative for money. A talent of silver was merely a tenth of what Naaman brought, and 2 sets of clothing were 1/5 what Naaman had. 2 Kings 5, verse 5. It was peanuts to the commander as well as the prophet. Third, be genuine, not guilty. 2 Kings chapter 5, 24-27. When Gehazi came to the hill, he took the things from the servants and put them away in the house. He sent the men away, and they left. When he went in and stood before his master, Elisha asked him, "Where have you been, Gehazi?" "Your servant didn't go anywhere," Gehazi answered. But Elisha said to him, "Was not my spirit with you when the man got down from his chariot to meet you? Is this the time to take money or to accept clothes, or olive groves and vineyards, or flocks and herds, or male and female slaves? Naaman's leprosy will cling to you and your descendants forever." Then Gehazi went from Elisha's presence, and his skin was leprous. It had become as white as snow. "Have you lost half a crown?" a small boy asked with his hand in his pocket. Yes, I believe I have," said the stranger, feeling in his pockets. "Have you found one?" "Oh, no," said the boy. "I just want to see how many have been lost today. Yours makes 54. Elisha asked Gehazi one of the shortest questions in the Bible. "Where, Gehazi?" verse 25. In between the question where and the name Gehazi, technically there is no "have you been," King James Version, "comest thou," King James Version, or "did you go," Holman. It was a question steeped with disappointment, distrust, and displeasure. This "where" question is in its shortest form in the Bible, with no noun or verb added, just simply "Where, Gehazi?" The accusation was clear, candid, compassionate, and civil. It was the time to come clean, but Gehazi played the possum, passed the bucket, and protested his involvement, innocence, and reproachability. Gehazi's answer to Elisha opened another can of worms. The first lie was to say he did not go anywhere, verse 25. The terse, touchy, and token answer was unseen in the Bible, with the negative no unusually leading the way, not a very good answer to one's master, a seer, or a prophet. The Hebrew answer in 5 words is, "Not go, thy servant, where." The last where is for emphasis, meaning wherever. Gehazi must have gone a long time, because commentaries speculated the distance, verse 19, was half a mile to a mile. Gehazi hid the treasure in a tower, Hebrew, and not a house, safe from the prophet's sight and strong enough from the eyes of penetration. But he was foolish and helpless enough to bring servants and men with him, both plural, verse 24, who could testify against him. He insisted he went nowhere because he had sent the men away, verse 24, thinking the incriminating witnesses and evidence had left. 2. He required servants and men because each talent was about 120 pounds weight. It was a kind gesture from the prophet to his servant to let Gehazi disclose rather than deny the truth, acknowledge rather than accentuate his mistake, redeem rather than regret his future. The lie was futile, foolish, and feeble. Conclusion. Have others' success and stability make you glad or gripe? Are you grateful for what you have rather than grudging for what you do not have? We are in a position to serve the Lord, share His resources, and seek His glory, not succumb to temptation, secure our rights, and store our resources. Are you focused on serving or striving, giving rather than gaining, advancing more than aiding? Bible study questions. Background. The prophet Elisha cured Naaman, who was suffering from leprosy. Naaman believed and worshipped the Lord, but Elisha did not accept Naaman's gift. 2 Kings 5. 1. Why did Elisha, the master of Gehazi, not accept Naaman's gift? Why did Gehazi insist on receiving a gift from Naaman? Why did he swear, "As surely as the Lord lives, that he must receive a gift"? Verse 20. 2. What reason did Gehazi use to ask Naaman for a gift, and why did he have to invent a reason? Verse 22. 3. What was the approximate value of the gift that Gehazi received? Verse 23. How much more valuable was this gift, 2 Kings 5:5, compared to that Naaman originally intended to give? 4. How did Gehazi respond when Elisha asked him where did he go? Verse 25. 5. How did Elisha rebuke Gehazi? Verse 26. What was Gehazi's punishment? Was it too costly for him? Verse 27. 7. List the mistakes of Gehazi in taking the garments from Naaman. 8. Examine the motivation of Gehazi. Group sharing. 1. Mr. X donated a lot of supermarket coupons in his own name to your boss to thank the company for his service, but he declined to accept personal gifts. Do you think he should accept them in the name of the company and let his colleagues share them? Discuss the pros and cons of personal or company accepting gifts. Different professions, situations warrant some discussion. 2. Mr. Y has decision-making power in the company and is valued by his boss, so many people try to get on his good books and attempt to give him gifts. The money is not necessarily a large sum. Sometimes it is just admission tickets for concerts, special membership discounts, etc. His boss is very lenient in giving gifts because he often uses these methods in doing business. Many colleagues think that as long as the boss's eyes are half open and half closed, Mr. Y does not have to worry, which is the benefit of his job. Mr. Y's wife, however, fears that he would be tempted unconsciously. What is your opinion? 3. List the examples of financial corruption you have observed in the workplace. Give some examples of breaking the law or professional or company regulations, and also give some examples of legal financial corruption. 4. How do people who obtained easy financial gain, power, and sexual seduction in the workplace avoid temptation? 5. How has this lesson helped you as a disciple of Christ to understand your role, identity, participation, influence, and relationship with others in the marketplace? Personal application. 1. Have you ever been tempted to take initiative to seek wealth by unhealthy means in the workplace? Why were you tempted? What were the risks or consequences? Do you need spiritual help now? Do you have a group that can support you and guard you from falling into temptation?